An innocent person gets accused of a crime, gets convicted, loses all hope of ever seeing freedom again. Then a team of dashing lawyers and investigators takes up their cause, proves their innocence, and they're set free. When I picked up this book, I thought it would be thrilling and satisfying to read. It turned out to be one of the most disturbing reads of my life. I often had to put the book down to catch my breath. Even as a reader, it made me feel helpless and hopeless. 10 stories of unimaginable miscarriage of justice, and every single word is true. Framed by John Grisham and Jim McCloskey is a book that shook me to my core. I finished it within 24 hours of picking it up. But whether it's a book that I recommend reading is something you can find out later in the episode. Let's switch on the reading lamp. Hello, I'm Asaveri, and on this channel, I review books and talk about reading in general. Let's look at the details of today's book.
Facts and Figures.
Framed is a non-fiction book co-authored by John Grisham and Jim McCloskey. It was published in October 2024 by Hodder and Stoughton in UK and Hachette in India. 368 pages long, available in paperback, hardcover and Kindle editions. The link to buy the book is in the first pinned comment and in the description below. Now for the contents of the book. But no spoilers, no worry. Just
The cover story.
Joe Bryan suffered the unbearable tragedy of his wife's murder. He was still reeling under the shock when he was arrested, tried, and found guilty of the crime himself, even though it was proved that he was 120 miles away at the time of the murder. Clarence Bradley spent 9 years on death row, coming to within 6 days of execution before new evidence cleared him of all charges. And in the case of the Norfolk Four, police and prosecutors blatantly ignored evidence and suppressed the voluntary confession of the actual perpetrator because it did not fit their preconceived theory. They first arrested 1, then 2, then 3, and then 4 innocent men who were tried and found guilty of a crime they had no connection to. There are 7 more cases of such gross miscarriage of justice in this book, including one in which an innocent man was executed for a crime that never actually took place. Anyone who reads legal thrillers has heard of John Grisham. He's the author of about 50 fiction novels, nearly all of them bestsellers. Many have been adapted into blockbusters and movies and series. My personal favorite, Matthew McConaughey's A Time to Kill. In 2006, Grisham wrote his first non-fiction book, The Innocent Man. It was about Ron Williamson, who was wrongly convicted of rape and murder and sentenced to death. He spent 11 years on death row before being exonerated and released due to DNA and other evidence put forward by Innocence Project. 5 of the 10 stories in this book have been written by John Grisham. The other 5 were written by Jim McCloskey. McCloskey is the founder of Centurion Ministeries, which was the first organization of its kind. Innocence Project and Centurion Ministries both are non-profit organizations that work to exonerate innocent individuals who have been wrongly convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment or death. McCloskey has personally led the teams that worked for the 5 cases he has written about in this book. Grisham also serves on the board of directors of both Innocence Project and Centurion Ministries. Now, I'll tell you what the experience of reading this book has been like.
Speaking my mind.
I will admit freely that I'm someone who cries at the movies and while reading books. I wear my heart on my sleeves. But if a book is too gory or violent or disturbing in some way, I chuck it without any regret. I don't struggle through a book because I don't feel the compulsion to finish every book that I start. But this book sunk its hooks in me. I started reading it on Wednesday morning and finished it on Thursday morning. I cursed and cried my way through the book. Every so often, I moaned and put the book down, literally in despair. My husband and daughter both told me to just stop reading it, but I couldn't. I felt like I owed it to those innocent people to read their stories. They spent decades behind bars for something they did not do. The least I can do is read about and acknowledge the truth of their suffering. But I'll tell you, for every story, I first went to the last page, found out what happened in the end, and then came back and read the whole story. It was the only way I could cope with the outrage and frustration that every story evoked in me. I couldn't stop thinking about why the police and judiciary behaved so abominably with these people. There were no personal grudges or scores to settle. These people were chosen at random to be made into scapegoats. What could have gone so wrong? First of all, it was convenience. The police took the easy way out. Instead of making an effort to find the real culprits, all the police cared about was closing the case. Second, racial discrimination. The bias against people of color is blatantly obvious in some of the cases. But in one astonishing story, 3 young white men were implicated in a crime mostly for the sake of optics and political gain. Third, reluctance to admit a mistake. This one is the most despicable of all reasons. Everyone from police officers, investigators to the prosecutors and judges, even after finding out the truth in each case, suppressed evidence, perjured themselves, coerced false testimonies from witnesses, and allowed innocent people to languish in prisons and even be executed for one reason alone. So they wouldn't have to admit that they had been wrong. This callous attitude of law enforcement and judiciary towards justice is unbelievable. This book will chill you to your bones. On the other hand, there are the defense teams that worked tirelessly and often for free on behalf of these innocent people to get them exonerated. Even when everything seemed lost, they didn't give up. Each case often ran into decades, and yet they just kept going. Their tenacity and commitment is incredible. It also surprises me that many of the wrongly accused bear little ill will towards those who were responsible for taking away their freedom and precious years of their lives. They may not be able to forgive, and forgetting is impossible, but they have moved on. They are simply grateful to finally be free and out of prison. One man spent years upon years in a cell that was 9 feet by 3 feet for something that he did not do. Joe Bryan not only lost his beloved wife, but also got falsely implicated in her murder and never got to see the actual perpetrator brought to justice. And yet every day, he thanks God for protecting him and keeping him safe when he was behind the bars. This book hit me hard about the really important things in life that we so easily take for granted. Our freedom, the companionship of our family and friends, the comforting mundaneness of our lives. The more I read, the more I was struck by how our attitude determines our outlook. These people who have every reason to be bitter choose instead to focus on the positives. In spite of losing decades of their lives, their careers, their relationships, they choose to be grateful for what they have now and for their freedom, which has been hard earned. No other book has made me count the blessings in my life and feel grateful for them the way this book has. What Jim McCloskey says about exonerees in general will tell you why this book is so important.
Quote unquote.
Once freed, the released face the formidable challenge of starting life all over again. It is a testament to the human spirit that so many of them have the will and capability to do so, unburdened with the anger and hate of years past, now filled with a forgiving heart and enhanced appreciation for the everyday things of life that most of us take for granted, and a desire for a peaceful and quiet existence. Now, the Linescape rating of today's book.
LINEDSCAPE Rating.
Up there is a link to the video that explains my Linescape book rating system. Today, all the parameters are rated 9 and 10, except enjoyment, which is rated 5. The writing is phenomenal, but I cannot, in all honesty, say that I enjoyed the book. Sense is rated 10 because the injustice itself makes no sense. But the authors have done a brilliant job in explaining each case as compactly and clearly as possible in a layperson's terms. The overall score is 90 over 100, which makes it a 4.5-star book. Now it's time to put my thoughts.
In a nutshell.
Framed by John Grisham and Jim McCloskey is not an easy book to read. What makes it even more difficult is the fact that it is completely true. You can brush aside a disturbing novel because it's fiction, imaginary, but with this book, you don't have that option. But as McCloskey said, these stories are a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. They are stories of gross miscarriage of justice, but they are also stories of the tenacious fight against that miscarriage of justice. Do I recommend reading it? Yes, I do. But that recommendation must come with a warning. This book will put your emotions through a ringer and leave you feeling disturbed for a long time. I leave it to you to decide. Do visit the Reading Lamp every Friday for a fresh book review. If you like this episode, please give me a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell icon and share with your friends and family. The more, the merrier. This is a Savri signing off for now. I think I'm going to look for a silly, easy read for the upcoming week. Until then, have fun under the reading lamp. Switch on, read on.